Alrighty, new episode of Stargirl. Let's take a look. What the fuck? Hello everyone and welcome to Stargazing. Today we're taking a look at episode 3, Icicle. Remember, as always, there will be spoilers, so if you have not checked out the episode, go and watch it. Thankfully, for those of you who do not have DC Universe, I can assure you that this episode, as well as seemingly future episodes, are not going to have content edited out. They are already edited to television length, so there's no problem. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to DCUniverse.com if you're a DC Universe subscriber, or CWTV.com or the CW app to watch it right now. Now, naturally, for an episode called Icicle, the main focus is on our primary villain. And we open just like we opened the pilot episode with a flashback detailing Icicle's history. Now, this flashback really sets up Icicle's whole deal. But one thing I find really interesting is that this flashback takes place 8 years ago, as opposed to the previous 10 years ago when Icicle and the ISA killed the JSA. This indicates that the JSA's death was not part of Icicle's motivation that we learn he has since his wife dies. That is pretty interesting to me, and I'm wondering if maybe they'll go into still the reason why the ISA finally decided to nut up and take down the JSA. For a villain, Icicle has, you know, a pretty typical sympathetic backstory. His wife died and he decided that he was going to combat injustice. It's nice to have a villain with a sympathetic backstory. And I do say sympathetic backstory, not sympathetic villain. Icicle is not a sympathetic villain, but he has a sympathetic backstory. I do feel like those two things get conflated a lot. And I want to highlight that. Icicle has a sympathetic backstory, but that does not make him a sympathetic character. The character is still completely cold-hearted. Icicle is cold-blooded throughout this episode. He is cutthroat, relentless, and will essentially eliminate anyone he has to for his plan. The episode also gives us our formal introduction to Cameron McKenzie, aka Icicle Jr. Fans of the comics, as well as Young Justice, or even if you watch the JSA episode of Smallville, will recognize Cameron. However, unlike most versions of Icicle Jr., which could be described with a single word, dicks. They're all just the biggest dicks on the planet. Just all assholes. This Cameron is a sweet boy. He is kind. He's an artist. He drew a picture for his mom when she was on her deathbed. He fixes up Yolanda's locker and paints pretty flowers on it to cover up the slut shaming, which we'll talk about that next episode. They also somewhat seem to be setting up a possible romance between him and Courtney, which we'll see about how that works out. And creating this version of Cameron who is nice and sweet and contrasting him with the despicable Icicle is really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that develops over the course of this series. I also really dig a lot of the adaptational changes that they've made with Icicle. Unlike the comics counterpart, Yor McKenzie, who is a European scientist who invented a cold ray gun, this version of Icicle is instead the son of European immigrants, I think Scandinavian immigrants, if I'm not mistaken, who, of course, has cryokinetic powers, which are pulled from Cameron in the comics. I think making him the son of immigrants is actually a really good way of tying it into the whole American dream theme that the show is building up, and how the ISA is really trying to form their own version of America. I also find it really interesting that Jordan's parents are apparently in and know that he's a supervillain. That's pretty interesting, actually. I kind of dig that. it's going to be cool to see how that shakes out. Of course, not only does this episode focus on Icicle and the McKenzie family, we also get some focus on the Wizard. William Zarek, his wife Denise, and Joey are main players in this episode, and honestly, as someone who really digs the Wizard and was kind of blown away by the fact that, oh my gosh, this is a live-action prestige television series that's going to have the Wizard, William Asmodeus Zard. Yes, I know they changed the name, but still, my mind was blown. Like, holy crap, so cool, right? And then it went and broke my heart. You're as cold as ice, Icicle. And I really like that they play up the idea that the Wizard is a performer and that he has to have some sort of stage, whether that's the political stage or a magic show stage. And we get a few hints towards the backstory of William Zarek in this episode, and honestly, it's the kind of stuff that really makes me intrigued and would really like to see more, but sadly we don't get that because Icicle kills him off and commits the tragic... He killed Joey! But Joey was so nice! You can't kill Joey! Hashtag justice for Joey! Justice for Joey! Justice for Joey! Justice for Joey! Honestly, that's one of my biggest complaints about the episode. We get these hints of mythology for this character, that he actually, that he killed his master before he actually was fully trained in sorcery, that the wand is capable of so much, and perhaps the wand will come back, but especially since Jordan has it at the end, but we don't really get to actually see any of this. It's just hinted at, and I'd like to have actually seen that, but considering that Wizard is dead, Joey is dead, got hit by a car, I'm still not over that. It means that we're probably not going to actually get anything on this. I mean, unless Denise turns into the next Wizard. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. That'd actually be really cool. Can we get that? Can we get Denise as the new Wizard? Can she, get the wand? That would be cool. You know, if there's one thing I really like that this episode highlights, is that it allows me to talk about Mike and Barbara. Because I didn't mention them at all in the last video, and I really should have. I am loving Trey Romano as Mike. He is such a brat, and I kind of love it. It really feels to me like they are setting up Mike getting shipped off to military school, like what happened in the comics. And I love how much of just a absolute brat this kid is. Just absolutely. Trey's performance is fantastic. I think it works so well. It's top notch. And of course, we also get to focus on Barbara Whitmore as she is starting her new job, meets her new boss, who just so happens to be Icicle. And we get a bit more character for her and how she's trying to kind of balance her work and personal life. However, that does bring me to one of the criticisms that I have of this episode. The ending of the episode is kind of supposed to show that the family is starting to become fractured. But the problem is, we haven't actually seen the family interact together. Yeah, we got a few scenes in the previous episodes, but we're not really seeing what the day-to-day is like for this family. Particularly, we don't really see what the day-to-day is like for Pat and Barbara and their relationship. And I feel like that is the one thing that this show needs to focus on, especially since, let's face it, Icicle is definitely going to be putting the moves on Barbara. They're telegraphing that very clearly. And in order to get us to care about Barbara and wanting to see her, not succumb to the cool charms of Icicle, we need to see her and Pat's relationship. And we haven't really gotten much of that. We got one conversation after Courtney stormed off in episode 1. We need to see more of their marriage, and we just haven't gotten that yet. Now, of course, I haven't talked about Pat and Courtney in this episode, and that's because there's really not much to talk about with them. they're kind of just still doing their thing. Courtney is gung-ho about taking on the ISA. Pat is hesitant. It's kind of the typical formula that they're going to have throughout the series. There's not really much reason to comment on it. However, what I will comment on is the fight scene between Stargirl, Stripe, and Icicle. Particularly how, once again, Stripe gets wharfed. You know, I gotta be honest, I kinda knew this was coming, but even seeing it, it's really disheartening that between Brainwave taking him out in episode 2, and Icicle taking him out as soon as they land in this episode, that Stripe is kinda just gonna get wharfed throughout this whole series. I bet when they face Tigress that she's gonna take out his with a EMP arrow or something. It's a little disappointing to see the big robot constantly getting taken down. But I do like the fight scene because of how it builds the character. Icicle goes in, it's not personal, he just is trying to take these guys down, and Courtney is way in over her head as Icicle immediately disables Stripe and takes out the Cosmic Staff. Pretty much the only reason that he doesn't kill Stargirl in this episode is just because Stripe goes all Mazinger on him. It's, with the fist, right? Ask your parents. And of course, the scenes with Pat and Courtney and their dynamic lead to the big Easter egg scene set piece of the episode, which is the return to JSA headquarters, which has been fixed up and now has all these nice little posters on the wall of all the members of the team. Except for the Hawks, weirdly enough. There's no Hawks posters. That's a little odd, admittedly. But yeah, aside from the Hawks, everyone's there. Flash, Green Lantern, Dr. Fate, Wildcat, Hourman, Dr. Midnight, Johnny Thunder, Starman. Oh, there's no Sandman either. Huh. Is there Sandman? No, I don't think there's a Sandman. That's weird too. Huh. And of course, amongst all these posters, we see each of the costumes, which at the end Courtney grabs so that she can recruit her fellow JSA members. And one of the more interesting things is that among the costume pieces and weapons that she grabs is the Green Lantern that Alan Scott used and the Thunderbolt pin. Those two kind of caught me at a surprise. Like, I figured we'd probably get Jakeem Thunder at some point in this show, but I figured it would be next season. So the fact that she went ahead and grabbed the pen, and that we heard a little laugh from Thunderbolt, that I loved that. But even more intriguing than the pen is the fact that she grabbed the lantern. That's weird, because in the comics, Alan has two successors, Jade and Obsidian, but neither of them draw their power from the lantern itself. So I'm really interested to see what they do with Courtney having the lantern and how that eventually gets us Jade and Obsidian. And yeah, I do not believe that they're gonna hand someone new a Green Lantern ring and have someone new take on the Alan Scott cape and all that. I definitely think that if we are gonna get any successors for Green Lantern, it's gonna be Jade and Obsidian. It's just a matter of how we get Jade and Obsidian. My current theory, personally, is that the lantern will, like, explode or something, and Jenny Lynn will get the green flame, and Todd will get bathed in some sort of shadow energy. I don't know. We'll see. Also of note in Easter eggs, when Jordan is talking about how he was traveling across America, he mentions two small towns from the DC universe. Littleville, which is the home of Robbie Reed from Dial H for Hero, as well as Hatton Corner. Hatton Corner was the setting for the first story that is considered the origin of the Teen Titans. And as a huge fan of both Dial H for Hero and Teen Titans, I loved the references. Top-notch, DC. Top-notch. Alright, and now for the part of the show where I need to get serious. You see, normally this is the part of the episode where I would recommend to you some comics for you to check out on DC Universe, or buy on Comixology, but, well, but frankly, there are a lot more important causes that your dollars could go to. In this episode, Jordan spoke about injustice and fighting injustice across America. Right now, there is a lot of injustice across America. So rather than focusing on comics and recommending comics for you to buy, I'd instead like to suggest something else. In the description of this video, I've included a list of resources and links for places to donate to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Right now, there is something happening in our country that is, well, it's horrible. And we have to unite to make a difference, to show that this country can still stand for justice. So please, consider donating to any of the funds that I have linked below and help out. Thank you. And join me next week on Stargazing as we cover episode 4, Wildcat. Keep looking to the stars, my friends. Yeah, I really liked Joey. I really wanted more Joey. I was really looking forward to seeing, like, what kind of evil turn he would take, you know, once he got, like, real magic. Hashtag justice for Joey.